So much, everyone. Good evening, everybody. My name is Arisa, and I am most definitely an alcoholic, and it's great to be back in Toronto. Um, Fellowship of the Spirit is very, very close to my heart. The date of my last drink was October the 13th of 1993, and I don't know about you. For me, that is a long time between drinks. The Beacon Group is my home group. I live in Boston, Massachusetts. And I got sober down in Corpus Christi, Texas, and came to Boston via New York. And, I think steps 10 and 11 are what I am asked to speak on the most. And I'm so grateful for that. I think that for me, this is where stuff really starts to get good. Step 11, I believe, is really designed to facilitate my third step decision, right? It gives me that freedom from the bondage of self through trust in something bigger than me. And trust is built. When Ali was asking me, what do you want the topic to be? I'm like, isn't step 11 enough? I mean, it just is. That's the topic. I mean, but the reason I selected what I did, first of all, step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. And I like to see, when I first got sober and I got to step 11, I had a long history with being a spiritual seeker before I came to AA. I took all these religion classes, I chanted with the Hare Krishnas. I was doing yoga and Pilates. I could put my legs behind my head. I was vegan. I went on a quest across, South America, paddled up in the Amazon in a 2-person canoe. I was a seeker, because God was lost. I come from a long line of missionaries, and somebody needed to carry the message to me because I didn't know how to find it, And so I made this mistake that I think a lot of us make. I came and I read the step off the wall and I did what I thought it meant, instead of actually finding out what it meant. And what I've come to realize is that, there are a lot of different types of meditation, lots of them, and they're all good, but they don't all treat alcoholism. Okay. They don't all treat alcoholism. When I try to get quiet, you see, maybe you don't have the chatter of 1,000 monkeys in your head, but I do. And they're going at it all the time. And they all have different opinions about everything. They've got an agenda, I got stage characters in here and they're fighting amongst themselves, and I'm going to already jump ahead, I believe that why it says upon awakening is because those voices start the moment I'm awake, and I need to get divorced from self-pity, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. Because if I'm not getting divorced from those things, I can never be married to my husband. I can't do anything else. I get mixed up and go into the restroom. So the very first thing I do every morning is roll straight out of bed and onto my knees and thank God for divorcing me from self-pity, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And I thank him for making me the very best wife, mother, daughter, sister, sponsor, and sponsee that I can possibly be today, right? Because I have to treat this alcoholism. And to go back to where I was, when I started really thinking about meditation, as it's talked about in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to treat alcoholism, the first thing, see, I've got a 17, something like that, 21. I've got a couple of really old dictionaries that were my grandfather's, and he died with almost 40 years of sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous. And in his old dictionary, the word meditation doesn't have the same meaning that we think of today. We have this idea that meditation is Eastern meditation, and that's a great thing to do. But it's not the way Bill would have been thinking about meditation. He wasn't, reading all about Buddhism, and Zen meditation. That wouldn't. The dictionary that I have talks about meditation being directed thinking, something much more akin to what we call contemplation. And the example is that a general meditates his war. That, it's like the big diorama, and Napoleon's sitting there going, if they come this direction, I'm going to move my little guys this way, but if they do that, then I'm going to go the other direction. And he's thinking it through. And one of the things, like there are a lot of stuff we hear in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that is just not really AA stuff, things like stinking thinking and my mind's a bad neighborhood. If you actually practice steps 10 and 11, then what my big book says is true, that I can trust my mental faculties with assurance. After all, God gave me my brain to use. My brain is just a tool for my spirit. See, I thought that the chatter of 1,000 monkeys was who I was. And I'm just trying to put duct tape over their mouths, but they're still reeling around in there, Duct taping the monkeys didn't help anything, Like I have to have freedom from the bondage of self. I've got to divorce them, right? I need to be living, life the way God is asking me to live. And I didn't know what that was. I had no clue. My sponsorship lineage is really big on just the basics, and I know a lot of you guys know the set aside prayer. FOTS was started, the original FOTS was started by my grand sponsor. And he's the one that really started this set aside prayer, right? God, please set aside everything I think I know so that I can have a truly open mind for a much needed new experience with whatever it is. So every couple of years, you know what I do? I get a new big book, completely unmarked up, so that I get to have a new experience with it. And it was in one of those early years of doing that, of, not assuming that I know what it's telling me to do, that my 10th and 11th step practice really, really began to grow and deepen. I've been doing big book studies for, 21 years, okay, something like that. And I love big book studies, except for that I hate big book studies. You know why I don't like big book studies? Because we parrot what we hear somebody else say. Don't let anybody read your big book for you, not Joe or Charlie or me or anybody. Have your own experience. You see, I don't know what you need to get out of this today, because my big book, how I relate to it has changed over the years. What I need to be, getting from this now is not what I needed 29 years ago. It just isn't. Right? I mean, when I was a single young girl, like what I was coming up with is totally different stuff, and it's not invalid. I needed to go through all of those things. I needed to understand what it meant to really have this, meditation practice. And what did that mean? And it didn't mean that I had to put my legs behind my head or sit in the lotus position or anything else like that. Okay, I didn't know that. When I started really thinking about this, you see, we are experts at prayer and meditation. I know a lot of us don't think so, right? But before we walk in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, we are some of the best meditators on the face of the earth, because worry and obsession, those are thoughts and prayers. I mean, that is meditation. Like we sit at the bar doing this. I ruminate. That's directed thinking. I can enjoy a good resentment like nobody's business. Like I can make a whole evening event out of it. I'm going to make popcorn and sit back and enjoy the show. I'm just like, that's meditation, directed thinking. See, I thought that I was being plagued by these thoughts in my mind. And I thought that other people just weren't plagued by thoughts in their minds. And I was just unlucky. Alcoholism is an obsessive compulsive disorder. It is, like that is what we've got. We are obsessive people, and we don't stop being obsessive people. We have to learn to obsess about other things, because whatever I feed is going to grow, right? So what do you want in your garden, babe? Like you're going to let the weeds grow or you're going to plant some flowers, how about a zucchini? What do you really want in there? Like that's up to me. I have to be the constant gardener because it's really easy to pull those weeds when they're little. It gets a lot harder if I let them stay. And so when I look at this, just this introductory thing, like that step 11 suggests prayer and meditation. And what does that really mean? The next sentence, we shouldn't be shy on this matter of prayer. Hello, sponsors, like we don't talk about this enough. What does it really mean? Why we don't talk about these things, because we don't talk about things we aren't doing. We don't talk about the things we aren't doing. And so a lot of people really are shy about this because they don't understand. They're doing what they think it kind of means, right? But I need to really understand that if I am going to, this is about putting that third step decision, like I said, into gear. I've been sitting in neutral up until now, right? Step 10 starts to give me some tools. These are steps 10 and 11 to me, these are spiritual exercises. We all like to go to the gym, but you gotta be doing your spiritual, curls every morning if I'm going to be able to approach life effectively, because that's the whole deal. Like I'm going to grow in understanding and effectiveness because I can't live off of the food that I ate last week spiritually either. I've done a lot of work over the years in Alcoholics Anonymous, but it is not going to keep me sober tomorrow. This is a daily reprieve. How do I show up for today on today's terms? Better men than we are using it constantly. And that word constantly, right? Continue and constantly. And these words that are letting me know like there's no stopping. There's no pausing. Right? I'm going to continue to watch, right? And I'm going to be asking, turning, pausing, cease fighting. I actually can't do 11 until I really understand how to practice step 10. When I've really begun to practice with all of these verbs, what does it look like to really watch? What does it look like to cease fighting? What does it look like? How do I actually do those things? Because otherwise, I'm a morbid reflection kind of girl. Like if I've got two thoughts coming into my mind at the same time, and one's, pink puppy dogs, and the other one is like, hellfire and brimstone, I'm going to pick the hellfire and brimstone. I don't know what that's about. I didn't think I was picking. You see, what I've learned is that I don't choose my thoughts. I'm not a tennis player, but I like this analogy. It's like the ball machine, when you're sitting there, and you want to practice your, what do you call it? Not serve, but, hitting it back over the, right. And the ball machine just starts throwing balls at you. Just pop, 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 pop. I'm the idiot thinking I got to hit every single ball. Like I'm running around making myself crazy. The truth is like those thoughts, they're just coming, they're going pop, pop. And if I don't swing my racket, the ball's not in play. It's on the ground and it's no big deal. And that's about my thoughts. I don't have to feed these things. See, I have a tendency to feed the things that really need to be starved and starve the things that really need to be fed. Like I said, why is it when people talk about, they're being happy, joyous, and free, we're like, they're just on a pink cloud. Hello, pink clouds happen every morning and every night. The only people who experience them are the ones who get off their duffs and walk outside or get to a window, right? They're real. What do I want to feed in my life here, right? It works if we have the proper attitude and work on it. That's really the gist of what I wanted to talk about tonight. What is that proper attitude and what does it mean to work on it? Because back in 6 and 7, we were working on our character defects. Please don't, like that's like, please don't. Like my experience is like, when I work on my character defects, the only thing that happens is they get worse. God needs to remove those. But here, these spiritual exercises in 10 and 11, this is where I get to really practice. This is it calls them. We can exercise our willpower along these lines all we want. It's the proper use of the will, right? Because I get my sanity back. And then I get my willpower back. And I get to use those things to choose my life today, to decide what I'm going to feed just for today, right? And again, you know, if it's that step 10 that makes 11 really possible, because I could accidentally pick up the hellfire and brimstone thought. And as soon as I am disturbed, I know the problem is within me. You know, I'm going to drift into morbid reflection if you give me the opportunity, right? Or if I'm practiced enough at it, I know how to turn. You know, I was doing my nightly review last night. I mean, I like to be current with people. Okay. Like last night, somebody was mean to me. Oh my God, somebody was mean to me. They were actually, it was really like uncalled for and out of line. And it was wrong. Right. And so I got to write some inventory last night, you know, and I didn't want to not be angry. That's the truth. That's a big part of what I got to look at last night. You know, like I said, I mean, who doesn't enjoy a good resentment kind of, you know, every once in a while, where it's some good justifiable anger and, you know, like get up on the spiritual, like, but I don't like the disturbance. And I can recognize it for what it is today, right? That again, you know, I want to really take a look at what is that proper attitude. And over again, it's trying to tell me, right, that that now that I have this sanity back, this, you know, in step 10 is a way of life, right? That love and tolerance is my code, that every day is a day when I have to carry the vision of God's will into all of my activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done, right? That this is a constructive exercise, right? To carry the vision of God's will into all of my activities. How do I really, really do that, right? Keeping those thoughts with me constantly, kind and loving, reflective, proactive. What are my motives? Being centered on you and not on me, and being careful not to drift into morbid reflection. Like those are a lot of the attitudes that it's talking about here, right? Because whatever I feed is going to grow. Attitude is not about what I'm doing, it's how I feel about what I'm doing, right? It's not that somebody hurt my feelings, it's how I feel about it, you know. And quite honestly, a lot of times when I'm taking a look at these things, it's more about, I get pissed off that you pissed me off, because I'm never supposed to get upset because I'm too sober. I'm super sober, you know, like I'm supposed to be, you know, hyper sober. Nobody should ever be able to disturb my apple cart, right? Like, that's just is not true. It's hysterical. Like we're funny, you know, we're funny, and I have to learn to not take myself quite so seriously, right? And so it's not like I'm not reaching for perfection here. I'm really not. I am much more interested in being real, in being right-sized, being perfectly human. Years ago, I read that a spiritual person makes about 600 mistakes in a day. That's like the Dalai Lama, guys, you know, and I'm here going, I don't know, did I make a mistake today? You know, like it's got to change to where's Waldo, because they're everywhere. The only difference when I'm willing to look is that I might not need to hurt you quite as much, right? That I can clean it up, that maybe I can do a little bit better. Because when I'm not looking, I'm still hurting people. That stuff's still happening. Right. So really, you know, when it looks at when we retire at night, the first thing I like to tell people is, you know, the word retire means to stop working. It doesn't mean I'm going to bed. I mean, I don't know about you, but I assumed that it meant, you know, last thing I'm doing. So I was doing the head bob, you know, I can't stay awake to do my nightly inventory because, you know, like, and today, like, that's not when I do it. You know, I go to bed at a lot of erratic times. I have, you know, some sleep and health problems, and, you know, but when I am done with the work of today, that's when I'm going to do this. And that doesn't mean, you know, come home from work, but, you know, I've got kids and I've made dinner, and because I don't know about you, but I don't get into much trouble watching Netflix. I just don't. So it can happen before the movie. That's totally okay. And again, this is about constructively reviewing my day. I'm going to try and build something here. Was I resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? That's a yes or no question, guys. I like to tell people when you've been doing this for a while, like we have a tendency to make this into, some sort of like heavy duty purgatory. It doesn't have to be that. If I'm really practicing my 10th step, then most of the time that's a yes or no question. I don't know about you, but for most of the time, that's a yes question for me. Yes. But I've already cleaned it up. Like last night, this thing happened just before the meeting. I went to the meeting. I came home and I wrote the inventory with doing my nightly review. So in that time, I actually did have a little more to deal with. But most of the time, by the time I gotten here, those disturbances have been dealt with in step 10. And if I'm going to be constructive in this, I've got to be using that 10th step, because as soon as I want to say, I could have, should have, would have, or I'm bad, or any of those things, I'm back. I need that 10th step to bring me back, right? The proper attitude is to remember that this is about growing closer to God. How do I have this time with God where I feel like I am talking to one of my very best friends? When something really bad happens, when somebody's mean to you, don't you want to go tell your best friend to get a hug? Isn't that what it should feel like? This isn't supposed to be, like I didn't know how to handle this situation any better than how I handled it. I really didn't. But what I did get to do is I got to, call my sponsor, and I got to really take a look at, well, what were my mistakes? What could I have done better? And there's a lot in there for me, because I don't have to be the girl that lets you hit me anymore. When you're being mean to me, I should be leaving. And I don't always know how to do that still. I've got a lot of abuse and stuff in my background. And it's really hard for me to say, like, no, it's not okay for you to treat me that way. It really, that's a hard thing. And that's a lot about, when I look at this inventory, what could I have done better? Not what should I have done. Should is that ideal, and back in the sex inventory, it says should, because it means that I didn't have the tools. If I had more tools, I would have done that. But today, this question is, what tools did I not use right then and there that God's trying to say, hey, kiddo, the truth is, I didn't want to go to this thing I ended up going to. It got kind of twisted around, and I ended up somewhere where I didn't want to go. And I just didn't say no, even though I knew it wasn't where I was supposed to be. And it was a really hard thing, because somebody said, well, we need you to lead it. And I'm like, so I went. I shouldn't have been there. That's my inventory. That's what I got to see in my nightly review, that I'm the one that put myself in a position to be harmed. You see, God's always been there. God's always trying to lead me. This nightly inventory isn't, oh, you're so bad for having, not figured this out sooner. It's, oh my goodness, like God really is in there saying, this way, babe, I gotcha. Let me carry you. Let me love you. I'm good with whips and chains. I mean, I grew up in a really abusive home, and, I literally was giving myself, like socking myself in the face. Like, I'm good with beating me up physically and metaphorically. I'm good at that. What I'm not good at is seeing how much God's trying to love me. I have to wake up to that there were tools, there were other ways. I didn't need to put myself in those positions. Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time? Where are my motives, right? What the question really comes down to, like, what did my day look like? Was I trying to manipulate life? Was I trying to manipulate God? Was I trying to run the show? Or am I looking and expecting love, care, and guidance? Expecting, like we like to say expectations are premeditated resentments. Where do you find that in the big book? My big book tells me over and over and over again to expect miracles, to expect God to be bigger than all of my problems, all of them, and sometimes, what that means? Yes, you're going to disappoint me. Yes, you might even break my heart. Yes, you might even be mean to me, but you know what? I would rather have a broken heart. I would rather have you from time to time do something that's not kind than to walk around covered in armor with a closed heart and no love. Because my job is to love you. If you love me back, it's bonus. My job is to love you, right? Were we thinking of what we could? What do I have the ability to do for other people, of what we could have back into the stream of life? That's the deal. And the prayer at the end of this is so amazing. After making our review, here it is, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. And I got really screwed up with that in the beginning. Like, wait a minute. So, I mean, a spiritual person makes about 600 mistakes in a day, but now I'm supposed to be begging God to forgive me for making, 600 mistakes in a day. Like, I don't get that. And here's the way I read it today. It's like if I was asking, John, that really cool car that's normally behind you, can I borrow that? Right? Can I borrow your car? You see, lack of power is still my dilemma. I don't have the ability to forgive myself. I can't see me the way God sees me. I need to borrow God's eyes. I need to see me through that lens of love, that lens of, like if you've got little kids, when they do something and they're just fit to be tied, and like they're just so cute almost, like you just want to hug them. Like, can I feel that way about this? How do I change, this adversarial like feeling that I've got about my higher power into something where I feel cherished, right? That I started to really realize that, this was more an inventory of my thoughts, because my actions come from my thoughts. Like, I really have to watch where I'm letting my mind go. That's why meditation is really the thing for me that changed everything. And that nightly review is a meditation. Like today, we know all about guided meditations, but they weren't running around with recorders, and iPhones to listen to somebody talking. This is a guided meditation written right there in the big book. Just do exactly what it says. That's all it is. And then upon awakening, it's another meditation. Upon awakening, again, as you heard me say, I take that really seriously, very literally. I didn't for a long time. And I was one of those girls who, way too much church, like I said, long line of missionaries. And I didn't want to get on my knees. And my sponsor would say things like, don't get on your knees if you don't want it to happen, which just ticked me off, frankly, until I got to a point where I really believe that God doesn't need me on my knees. He doesn't. God does not need me on my knees. I need to be on my knees. It's about me. I get on my knees so that I can have the proper attitude, because I want to be up on that, pedestal. I want to be equal to God. I don't want to need anyone. So the knees are for me. So I do that, but here we go. Meditation. Let us think about the 24 hours ahead. So this is a meditation. What does it mean? Think about, okay, here's what I'm going to do today. It's like a to-do list. That's all it is. So first, then the next sentence, we consider our plans for the day. So now I got the list, and all I'm doing is going, God, what do you think about this? Because that's what it means to consider, to think deeply, like that general going, oh, they go this way, then I'm going to do that. But if they go the other way, I'm going to do something else. Can I think about this next day? And what's amazing to me is how God comes in and he seems to stitch love right into what I think the day needs to look like, sometimes completely changes. And it's going to be God's day and God's agenda, not my agenda. And again, a prayer here, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. What an incredible promise, and our thinking will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. That's the whole point. Like when it's my life, see that third step, like I was saying, in the third step, it's not my life anymore. I gave it to God's. My job is to sign up for service. God, where do you want me? I'm willing to go. Where do you want me to go? Put me in the game, send me out. Like, I'm here to do it, because the thing is that, a girl from Texas. Okay. I'll give you one of my favorite analogies about steps 10 and 11. When they work together logically, and, people get really confused about 10. 10 is that inventory that helps me to see I am disturbed. And 11 is grab God's hand again, right? I've dropped God's hand. Oh, that's how I know in 10. So I got to grab God's hand in 11. Inventory, prayer, meditation. Inventory, prayer, meditation, right? So I like to call step 10 the Alanis Morissette step, because I got one hand in my pocket and the other one's getting into trouble over there, like whatever it's doing. And then in 11, it's that, like reconnecting. So when I think about, about this, right, that the whole point of me saying I'm from Texas is when I think about a rodeo. Right. The classic rodeo thing is some old boy trying to stay up on some wild horse. Right. That's the classic thing. And the reason they did that is because back in the day, if you wanted a horse, you had to go catch one. Right. And so it was some job of some guy to hop up on that horse and hold on until he got thrown off. And then when he got thrown off, his job was to get back on and hang on for dear life until he got thrown off. And when he got thrown off, you know what he did? He got back on. And he hung on for dear life and until he got thrown off again. And then he gets back on, he gets thrown off again, and he gets back on, he throws off again. And you know what happens after enough time? The horse is willing to be ridden and it will go where we ask him to go. That's all. See, my brain is just like that. My brain is a tool. And it is undisciplined. We alcoholics are undisciplined. So we let God discipline us in this simple way. I need to throw a saddle over this brain of mine, and so I'm going to watch, I'm going to ask, I'm going to turn, I'm going to pause, I'm going to pray, I'm going to meditate. And eventually what started, see, I suffered from horrible nightmares. I mean, for those of you who know my story, there was a lot of violence in my childhood. I was abducted. I mean, a lot of bad stuff happened to me. And I suffered from terrible, terrible nightmares well into sobriety. And what really changed it was doing this kind of meditation, where I started to really choose what I'm going to focus on. Because if I tell you, don't think about the Mona Lisa, guarantee you all just thought about it. And here I was trying not to think about things. I'm not going to think about what happened to me. I'm not going to think about getting abducted. And all I was doing was stuck there. I had to get interested in something else, which is what step 12 is all about. We turn our thoughts to someone we can help. That's why it's asking, were we kind and loving towards all? Were we thinking of ourselves? Like, who am I helping? What am I packing into the stream of life? I need to get busy in this life, because AA is a bridge back to life. I don't want to have a small life. When I have nothing better to do, I start watching reruns of abuse. That's what I do. That's why I suffered that way. And so my thought life has to be cleared of wrong motives, right? And so again, this is all about character building. I have to be here for character building, not comfort. Am I willing to suit up and show up for this, right? If I do that, the amazing thing is that, risking this personal discomfort for a change in behavior actually creates comfort over time. It's by being willing to be disciplined. And I thought I had a bad idea of discipline. I thought that was about getting hit and getting beaten up and all of those things, but it isn't. Discipline, the word itself basically means to teach. It means to teach. Am I teachable? Am I going to let God teach me in these simple ways? Am I willing to try something different? These beautiful promises, right? Well, first, another little prayer. Here we ask God for inspiration and intuitive thought and decision. Right. And then we relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. Those are directions, right? But then it's the right answers are going to come after, thank you, we've tried this for a while. And that's, what I begin to realize that it doesn't mean that life is going to be smooth sailing. It really doesn't. Just because I'm trying to live this spiritual life doesn't mean that life is not going to, come in on me. Because peacekeepers don't go to peaceful places. They go to hostile territories. I have to have peace inside of me, but the world does not have to be peaceful. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If my internal connection is there, if I don't get disturbed, right? If I seek to understand, if my job is to love you and I stop trading, if you love me back, it's bonus. That's great. Because, honestly, like, I should never need to say a word. You ought to be able to know everything you need to know about me by watching my feet. Who am I? This could be a silent movie. Watch my life. We used to always say, like, watch their feet. Don't listen to their words. Watch their feet. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous for me really, you guys showed me that following God's path is actually really, really easy. Like, God does not make too hard of terms for those who seek him. You know what's hard? Not listening to the redhead. It's really hard to not listen to this girl. Like, I am still my problem. It's still the girl in the mirror that, like, somebody's got to, like, shut her up. But, let's make no mistake, there is a progression to sobriety that it talks about so beautifully on the top of page 87, right? What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Those are the things that I'm living for. Like, I can trust my mental faculties with assurance. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely on it. Now, for those of you who don't believe me about those being guided meditation, this next sentence, we usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer. There you go. It really is a meditation. I'm not making that up. I'm not yanking your chain. I'm not, like, that was how I figured out, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And the amazing thing is, and I could sit in quiet meditation, like fighting my thoughts for long periods of time, and I would do all these crazy things, but they didn't give me the relief from alcoholism. And I don't care what you do on top of, those things are great to do. Do not misunderstand me. But if you really want to deal with the alcoholism, try doing this, and you can make it really, really simple. It doesn't say you have to spend half an hour doing this. I mean, we're busy, important people, aren't we? Come on. Like, I need the down and dirty that I can do even the day after I had back surgery. Let's be honest. Because, any day, like, the bulk of my inventory is really asking this. My nightly review is really asking this. What is the distance between the program and Arisa's program? Because that's the measure of my misery right there. And I need to know that I am practicing these principles. How I practice them, and it can fluctuate to some degree. When I had sick kids on 9/11, those sort of things, like, we're not going for the big long routine, guys. We're running for the hills or whatever, but am I going to make sure that each day really belongs to God? And how do I do that, right? How do I make sure this attitude again here, that I ask to be shown all through the day what my next step is to be given whatever I need to take care of my problems, asking especially for freedom from self-will, and careful to make no request for myself only. There's a lot of humility, that attitude again. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends, right? That's the thing, intuitively asking for those right thoughts or actions, right? Because again, I got my power. I've gotten a lot of power back. But how am I going to use it? I need to align my will to God's. And I'm going to end with this. I believe what it says in that 7-step prayer, my creator, right? If God created me, then God put my desires in my heart. And see, I've been fighting what I think God wants me my whole life. And I had to finally get to this point where I believe what it says in the family afterwards. We are sure God wants us happy, joyous, and free. That if God made me, then he put my desires in my heart. And therefore, the shortcut to my heart's desire, it's God's will. It's aligning my will to God's over and over and over and over again. And all I'm being asked to do in 11 is see how much more love there was in this day that I can possibly embrace. And what love did I miss today? That's it. Love and service, love and tolerance, love, love, love. That's it. Like, if I love you enough, then it'll melt that polar ice cap from around my heart. You don't have to love me back. The world will somehow, some way, someplace. My job is to quit trading and just be a giver, not a taker anymore. It is great to be with you guys. I love you. Have a beautiful night. Do not make other plans.